Welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success story series of interviews where we discuss with local business leaders their successes, their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this morning, I'm delighted to have with us David King, who's the COO at Good Neighbours UK. So, David, firstly, thank you so much for spending some time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself and Good Neighbours UK and all the wonderful things you do, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, hi, Chris. David King, COO of Good Neighbours UK, as you mentioned. We are a charity registered in the UK with an independent board of trustees, and we are a membership. We are part of a membership group of the global Good Neighbours Partnership. So essentially, we share the brand and share the values, but we stay independent in the UK. So what do we do? So Good Neighbours internationally works in around 40 countries around the world. We deliver humanitarian support. We kind of do it in a different way to many. We work in the communities, with the communities and for those communities. So, and we generally go in for the long term. So it's not just kind of putting in a water pump. It's actually working with community leaders, finding out what is needed in those locations. So it could be anything from climate change, building gabion walls in Nepal, or building schools, moving water pumps, improving the education, working with the education facilities in those countries. And, you know, so we're there for the long haul. So it's actually about community development in its widest sense. So that also includes building social enterprises, teaching farmers, planting seeds, you know, it's kind of building microfinance solutions, and really just bringing expertise and different way of thinking to those communities to enable them to grow. Wow. In the UK, we're based in York, and we do a similar thing here. We want to work in partnership with other organisations, and we've been fortunate enough to build a garden in the centre of York, which is was donated to us. It was just overgrown. So we got community members to come along as volunteers, create the garden, build the space, which enables us to reach out and do those things that we want to do. So it's helped people that are retired, want to get involved, reducing isolation. We've had migrants come along for coffee mornings just to have conversations in English to help them and get them to meet people in the community. So it's quite broad what we do, but I guess the essential thing is that we are focused on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And there's 17 goals, and it's a kind of common language around the world. We just need to do more of it in the UK. It's a common goal that looks at many things, and our focus generally is around women, girls, gender equality, education, and it's creating harmony through partnership.
Brilliant, wonderful. I mean, it must be a very, very rewarding organisation to work with and for.
It is. I mean, it is. One of the things I've been in business for a long time, and I did have a massive change at one point in my career that kind of led me in this direction, which I can talk about later. And the rewards aren't necessarily financial.
Yeah.
You know, every day you're seeing someone benefit. Although the word benefit is probably getting a little bit outdated, but you know, people, you feel as though you're making a difference.
Yeah, I'm quite sure about that. And for anyone that's watching, whereabouts is the garden in York?
The garden is in Castlegate. It's just behind the Van Gogh Museum.
Oh, right. Oh, wow.
And it's next to Barry Crux, who's the landlord that gave us that, you know, donated the use of the ground. So
Brilliant.
it's surprising to have something like that in the centre of busy York.
Absolutely. I know exactly where that is, but I'll walk down there and have a look. So thank you for that.
So Good Neighbours, it was Korean based, so not many people know of it as an organisation.
Yeah.
But we're quite sizable globally as a partnership. As I say, we're small and independent, but part of that bigger team. Decided to move to York, for the Northern powerhouse, you know, skills creation. Yes. Also, York was the first city, human rights city, and a city of sanctuary. So there were many things that made us come to York as part of our kind of stepping our toes into the UK, so to speak.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. That's fascinating. So if you could tell us a little bit more about your background, how you got into business and why this particular one, although obviously from what you said already, I could understand that. But it'd be great to know a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so I'm a Londoner. I sang in it. This is going to be this is a long journey, so if you can bear with me. I went to Wandsworth Boys School and sang in a choir, and was quite fortunate enough to be. It was a famous choir, and I was quite fortunate enough to be involved in making about 11 albums. The choir won 2 Grammy Awards.
Wow.
I sang with Pavarotti on Nessun Dorma, the original recording. And this was all at the age of 12 and 13.
Wow.
That kind of gave me a passion because I actually liked the back end of the recording. So the wires, the mixing desks, the TV cameras. We used to do TV. So all these things were going on when I was just a young lad. But that got me excited about technology. And I kind of went on to do an apprenticeship at Decca Radar, which was just down the road, a huge employer in the area of London, Wandsworth. And I went to college. I wasn't very good at school, didn't do too well. I mean, I think it was just an age thing. So I kind of had to pick up my game at college and did a couple of GCSEs and went on to do an OND. And then I decided, actually, I quite liked the education side and left the apprenticeship and carried on with that, and then got into recording bands, doing music, passionate about music, and decided I wanted to become a recording engineer. Now, I think this seems a long way from Neighbours, but there is a link. So I worked for AMD, the microchip manufacturer.
Yeah.
And became their head of communications in Europe after a couple of years. Given the passion for electronics and communications, that was something that I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
Did that, and then the company moved further out from where I was living, and I moved as well. So suddenly I'm commuting across London, 100 miles to Basingstoke. It just wasn't sustainable. So I decided I'm going to try and work in the city, and was fortunate enough to get a role at Swiss Bank Corporation just as technology was really starting to come to the fore.
Yeah.
This was all before PCs, the internet, etc., etc. So quite complex technology, and I worked there for 15 years. I went from being a computer technician to an executive director and a global head of IT, one of the global heads of IT, with my particular area of responsibility was, and it seems like a long time ago now, the year 2000, global preparedness. I worked all around the world, worked with the Bank of England, worked with the British Bankers Association. Yeah, so I kind of, then I became, after the year 2000, I was the global head of disaster recovery. And disaster recovery is probably more known now as continuity planning.
Yeah.
So it's kind of keeping the business going in the event of particular issues. Alongside that, I started volunteering as a mentor for Roots and Wings. It's a part of the Prince's Trust. And that was mentoring young people in Deptford, which is kind of quite a poor area of London in the shadow of the city.
Right. Yeah.
So I was working with them to give them world of work experience, confidence in travel, making them realize that people in banks weren't just kind of old school, you know, anyone is welcome, and giving them the opportunity. So I started volunteering, and I did that for 10 years, and I ended up mentoring the executive of that charity at the time. And then along came 9/11, which was an absolute catastrophe, and I was being one of the heads there. It was quite catastrophic, and you know, heart still goes out to the families. You know, 2,996, I think, people perished, and it was catastrophic for me personally, as I was in London, couldn't do anything about it, felt helpless, and it was a changing point for me. I just realised that actually it's not just about banking and career. There's more out there, and I decided a couple of years on from that, I left the bank and decided to go full-time into the charity sector. So you can see that whilst there's a technology link, the catastrophe kind of drove me towards the mentoring, volunteering that I was doing, as thinking, actually, this is a really worthwhile cause. So you know, that was a big change. I guess one of the guys that I worked with at the bank was Lord Jim O'Neill now, and he is one of the key drivers for the Northern Powerhouse. We worked together quite closely. He was the global economist at the bank at the time, and we kind of developed an intercom system where he could do his daily reports around the world electronically, say before the internet, before WhatsApp, before all the technology available now. So quite a massive project. And so I got to know Jim a little bit at the time, and so that kind of drove me, you know, just that big change moved me into this career. Yes.
Wowzers. That's quite a it's quite a journey over time, and I can understand. Well, I say I can understand. Like, I can understand how something so significant in your life will make a change, and obviously that will be a significant challenge that you faced at the time. But what are some of the things that, you know, along your journey, what some of the biggest challenges you've had to face and overcome, would you say?
Well, I think if I mean from a career point of view, one of the challenges I think is it's not loyalty so much. It's more sometimes I think people feel that they need to be indispensable, and I actually take the view that you should become dispensable.
Yes,
because I think being indispensable kind of can trap you in your role, and I think you can potentially become stale, and yet you feel as though you've got the security because everybody needs you for that particular role. Whereas I took the view that if you're dispensable and you've got the confidence to be able to problem solve, fix things, then it gives you the ability to move on.
Yeah.
And I think that gave me the opportunity in my career to be able to step forward, because so the challenges were kind of how to break small cycles of work and create stepping stones. So that was kind of a challenge at the time.
It's no, it's a great point. It's something we when we work with organisations, it's something that comes up a lot, is that our job should not be to become indispensable, but should become dispensable, so that we can recruit our successor and move to the next level. Because, as you rightly say, you can't move up if you're needed in that role. It would affect the organisation. So it makes perfect sense. It's a little counterintuitive, isn't it? Because we sort of naturally, I think most people have that. We like being needed, I guess. So the indispensability is something that's quite attractive, but it as you said, it's sensible to become indispensable. So and again, across everything that you've done, and obviously mentoring other people, what are some of the biggest things you've learned about business?
Well, I think it translates into all walks of life. So
Yes.
much of the work that I was doing in banking, I now do in the charity sector. It's exactly the same. It's just the context of in which you're working. I worked for a great organisation called Pilot Light, which is an organisation that matches business executives with charities, and they kind of help charities develop their strategic capability. And so through that, I worked with, I don't know, nearly 100 organisations, Marie Curie, Centrepoint, many of the big names, as well as some of the smaller charities. And, you know, in charity work, a lot of people sign up because they're passionate about the cause.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily have the business skills. So being able to work with an organisation that was mentoring in some respects the charity leaders to become more effective as business leaders can help push those charities forward, which is, you know, incredible. But I think that business is something that is universal, and it can translate into any aspect of life. Yes,
I agree. Funnily enough, by coincidence, I work with an organisation called Smart Aid in Leeds, and it was a similar concept of, rather than you know, when organisations wanted to help charities, social enterprises, rather than go and do manual work, you know, the typical example would be get a group of accountants to go and paint fences or get them to do some financial work, because that's, you know, the value of what they do is way more. It is very valuable to organisations. So it was matching in, you know, accountants into doing financial work, or solicitors doing legal work, and therefore the value was far higher. In fact, I remember one of the charities we worked with at the time, I think the CEO said, yeah, well, you know, we had a group of accountants in, and they painted a room for us. Not only did they do such a bad job that we had to get it repainted, but we had to get a new carpet because they ruined that as well. So it was a good example. So it absolute sense to me, and it is, you know, and it's a very rewarding thing to do work in an organisation that is you know, that is very valuable to them, and offer that. So that's absolutely fascinating. And you're probably aware we're a coaching organisation. I'm keen to know who the best coaches that you've worked with would be, and why, and that can be business, sport, or life in general.
So at Swiss Bank, I said I wasn't very good at studying at school, but I had to catch up, and I ended up going to do a master's degree without a first degree. And I had my tutor was a mentor as well, and Dr. Thomas Docker, I think he's retired now, back into New Zealand, but he was fantastic. And, you know, I think the value that I got was he was able to listen, able to provide alternative solutions, didn't have an axe to grind, um, coached in the sense of, you know, try this out, try that out, fall over, graze your knees, try this again. And because they're not part of the organization, there's no politics. So you've got this kind of freedom to grow yourself and with alternative solutions, because I think sometimes you get stuck in the way that you do things. So getting outside support and outside help from a mentoring point of view is invaluable. And I think that's what happened, you know, happens at Pilot Light. So it used to be 4 executives to 1 charity, and I learnt from all of those executives because they're problem solving in many different charities. And so I think I've been lucky to have, you know, such support and opportunity.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Very, very interesting. And are there any favorite quotes or sayings that you use a lot or fall back on at various particular times?
Yeah, I mean, they're cliches now, but I think that there's a few. You can't eat the elephant in one bite, I particularly like, which is similar to you can't drink the ocean in one gulp. It's like do small bits at a time rather than trying to do the whole thing. I guess other ones are run it up the flagpole and see who salutes it. Cliche, you know, create ideas and see if it gets leverage.
Yeah.
So there's a couple, you know, that's same as that kind of throw something at the wall and see if it sticks.
Yeah.
So those kind of they're always ones that kind of stick with me.
Brilliant. Love it. And what have you learned about yourself through this amazing career you've had?
I think it's interesting is that I know this might sound negative, but it's I used to think that I didn't particularly like people. I know that sounds completely strange working in an environment that I work in now, but you know, through lockdown, I suddenly realized that the biggest thing that I was missing was people.
Yeah.
And you know, when we started working in lockdown, the thing that was missing was the team. You know, it's okay doing Zoom meetings, but you always feel as though somebody has to be talking. There's no kind of pause. There's no kind of let's think about this. You know, if you go quiet on a call, some people think you're not wanting to communicate. So for me, a big learning curve is that actually you can't do without working with people.
Yeah.
To be creative, you need to spin ideas off each other. To be effective, you have to work as a team. Then I think, you know, many organizations will probably have struggled with that. So we now make time in an element of hybrids to make sure we get together for that team element. So from a life skills and a changing point of view, lockdown has kind of kicked it into touch a bit, but it's, you know, I suddenly realized that actually I need to be amongst people, not just sort of on my own.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, obviously we're all different, and some people, you know, have a bigger requirement to be amongst people a lot of the time. But even for those of us that don't need that on a regular basis, we still need some interaction, don't we? It's a pretty tough gig without having some interaction with people on a regular basis. So trying to look forward a little bit, what does the future look like for you guys, and what challenges might you face, if any?
The challenges are huge. We Good Neighbours was involved in working with Bond. Bond is the kind of key leader in the network for NGOs in the UK, and they work closely with the government. And on the 19th of July, we published, I contributed to the UK's response to how they're dealing with the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
Right.
And the challenges in there are huge. It's you know, it's a waterbed effect. You know, we're seeing it every day on the news, the economy, etc. But you know, we're sitting in a situation of COVID, conflict, and the millions and millions of people around the world are being pushed into poverty.
Yeah.
Food security. I mean, the challenges are just massive.
Yeah.
And we can only really, I think, get through this in partnership. We can't work independently. We need to work together. And we have to do that, you know, around the world and in the UK. I mean, we're not in isolation here. You know, food banks. It's a terrible situation that we're facing. So, you know, if you get a chance, read that report on the SDGs. It's published on Bond on their website.
Okay.
But the challenges are just absolutely massive, and you know, it's pushing some ideas towards the government to make changes. And I'm also part of the involved in the all parliamentary party group on the Sustainable Development Goals. So kind of pushing at it from both ends, really, just to try and make a change. And the challenges are, you know, we've never seen anything like it. It's not going to go away for a long time, and we have to all work together on this.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll look that up. And just a few sort of simple things as we close a little bit. But what would you say to anyone that was thinking of going to business right now, David?
I think business is it kind of has a strange name, but if you actually think, when I was talking about banking, it's actually a city in a building. Absolutely everything is done in that building, from services, infrastructure, highly skilled banking experts, management, you know, everything, facilities management, reception, everything is done. And so it's a great way to, you know, and that's all under the word business.
Yes.
So, you know, so in some respects, it's kind of, what do you want to do? You know, what is it that you want to do? Think about that and seek out opportunity, because there's a lot of it about.
Yeah. Brilliant. And if you started again, is there anything that you do differently?
I think it's you can't deny the fact that you gain wisdom. So you probably would do things differently. I think you graze your knees and fall over, and you get up and you realise actually there's probably better ways to do things, so you avoid falling over again. I think it's just, you know, the challenge is that it's every business is going to be different. You apply yourself, do your best, be persistent, try things out, graze your knees. And if I was starting again, I come in with all of those lessons. Yeah,
brilliant. And finally, what would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do so?
Oh, I think it goes back to that. Think about what you want. It's difficult at that age. You know, you come through the education system as it is at the moment. It's a very kind of formal maths, physics, science, those kinds of things. When I was at school, did engineering, art, woodwork, a lot more vocational. Gave me some visibility to different things. And I think if I went back to talk to me, I'd just say, you know, crack on, do your best. There's lots of choice out there. And yeah, that's it.
Brilliant. Wonderful. Great advice. And it's interesting how many people, when asked that question too, David, I mean, and it's bang on at 18, you know, it's difficult. You know, we are asking yourselves to make some quite significant career choices at that point. And you know, we've only got, you know, well, we may be an adult, but in terms of our wisdom, for one of, you know, for the use your word, it's so light, it's difficult, isn't it? And many people that I've spoken to, you know, the career or the business they're in right now had very little relationship to the studies they had when they were that sort of age. So, well, look, it's been fascinating talking to you and to learn a little bit more about the wonderful things you guys are doing. And it'd be great to visit the garden at some point. So thank you so much for your time this morning, David. It's been really interesting.
Thanks, it was a pleasure.